welcome back. Today I'm just doing a quick little tutorial to show you something. So I got this frame at the thrift store for about $2, and underneath the glass is a really cheesy photo that I don't really care about. Mainly I was just buying it for the glass and for the frame. Now the back is sealed, and I didn't want to cut through all of this. Oh, I'm sorry, this is actually $6.99. Still a good deal for this size and type of frame. I didn't want to cut through all of this to change it, so what I did is I had a print made of my recently departed dog, who I love with all my heart. And what I'm going to do, so what I have done is I've used a little Mod Podge on the glass and adhered the photo, and I'm going to seal the photo into the frame with some resin. So this is kind of a different way to preserve some photos or some art that you have. So if you want to do this project, you're going to need, of course, your frame, your print, some Mod Podge to adhere your print to the glass. You're going to need some regular rubbing alcohol, which you should clean the glass with before you begin, just to get off any lint or dust or anything. You're going to need a butane torch, so that you can pop any bubbles that come up when you add your resin. You're going to need some plastic cups and some wooden craft sticks to stir. You need 1 cup for the resin, which is the hardener, and 1 cup for the actual resin itself. And these, when you mix these, you have to mix the exact same amount of each part. So if you look here, I'm using Pro Marine Supply's Tabletop Epoxy. There's a part A, and then there is a part B, which is the hardener, which is what gives you that solid plastic coat. So the first thing you need to do is you need to fill a cup, and you can mark, with a marker. You can get measuring cups. I use these lines usually because they're just already there, and you can get big packs of these at the dollar store. So that is not an investment. You can also get these at the dollar store. And the alcohol and the Mod Podge. You can get all those at the dollar store. So I'm going to start with part A. And it doesn't matter what part you start with. It's all going to get mixed together anyway. And normally you should absolutely be using gloves with this. This is kind of a spontaneous video for me, and I couldn't find my gloves. But you should wear gloves when you're working with resin. So I'm going to slowly fill my cup up to that first line that I showed you, and the hardener is a lot thicker, so it'll pour a little more slowly. All I've done here is I filled up my first cup to this first indentation with my epoxy resin, and then in this next cup I'm going to fill it with the hardener, and it's really important that you have the exact same amount of hardener as resin. Okay, so now you can see we have pretty much equal parts. Actually, this one could use a little more, so we're going to add a little more to this. And now we have equal parts resin and epoxy. I'm sorry, resin and hardener. So what you're going to do is you're going to give each one a stir for about a minute, and it's going to be very thick. And what you want to do when you stir is you want to make sure that you're scraping the sides and you're scraping the bottom so that none gets unmixed. And we're going to go over here and stir this one the same way. the resin itself is going to be a lot easier to stir because it's not as thick. So now I've thoroughly mixed my hardener and my resin, and now I need to combine the two. Probably easier to pour the hardener in. It's a little thinner than the resin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine this. And then I'm going to scrape down the sides and make sure I get every little drop in there. So then we're finished with that. And now you need to combine these, and you really need to stir these. But again, you do want to make sure that you are scraping the sides and the bottom as you stir. And you're going to do this for about 2 to 4 minutes. Okay, so now I've thoroughly mixed my 2 parts resin and hardener, and it's going to look a little something like this. So now the next step is I'm going to pour my resin over top of my photo. And this frame has a little lip here, so I'm going to try to stop it at that lip so it doesn't spill over. A good tool for doing like a certain leveling resin pour is one of these guys. You could also use an old credit card, an old business card, you know, and you take this and you can smooth your resin down after you pour it. So, and then once we get our first layer on here, then I will use my torch and just run it about 4 to 5 inches over the surface, and the heat from the torch will pop any bubbles that are in our resin, because if you don't pop the bubbles, then it'll cure and it'll have like those little bubbles in there, which, you know, is not the end of the world, but it just looks better if you get all those bubbles out. So we're going to give it one more stir around the sides, in the bottom, scrape the bottom of the cup, and then we're going to start pouring. I got one of my larger wooden craft sticks because this is so thick. You can get these, I believe I got these at Michael's. Any craft store will have these. Actually, those might have been Walmart. Okay, so I'm going to start pouring. I'm going to start around the edges. And there is a way, if you look somewhere online, there is a resin calculator that can tell you how much resin to mix per inch of your project. Being the crazy woman I am, I never do that. I just kind of take a guess at it, and then if I don't have enough, I quickly can mix some more, or if I have too much, I'll just use it on another project. So all I'm doing right now is tilting my frame and letting that resin kind of spread around on its own. And after I've done that to where it's filling out really well, then I'll use that flat tool, and I'll use that use it as a spreader. So again, I'm just kind of tilting and letting it flow naturally down the photo. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to smooth it up and down. I'm kind of pressing it back into those corners where the wood is, just to make sure that there's no visible empty spot that the resin doesn't reach. And if you happen to get some where you don't want it, like on this wood part or something, you could always tape those edges And then when you're finished, you can also sand that part off with just regular sandpaper. So I feel like I've got a pretty good covering here. Now see all those little bubbles? We're going to pop those with our butane torch. So that'll be our next step. You see those bubbles disappearing? You want to move this continuously. You don't want to let it linger on any one spot or it will catch on fire. So you just want to move quickly with your torch. But you also want to make sure you hit all those bubbles that you see. And since this is such a large piece, it's taking me a little longer to get all the bubbles. And also the butane torch helps the resin and the hardener harden more quickly. So when you let your piece cure, you kind of want it in a room temperature. You don't want it too cold. So just making sure I get all those little tiny bubbles that were in there. And that's pretty much all you're going to do. And then this needs to cure for at least 24 hours. I would say with this much resin, I'm going to leave it for probably 48 hours. And then when you're finished, when everything is cured, it should be hard to the touch. You should be able to tap on it like glass. And then you can, if it's cloudy in any way, you can buy epoxy polish. It kind of looks like shoe polish. I didn't get one. I didn't get my bottle out for this video. But if you look, Michael's has it, Amazon has it, and that you would just put onto a microfiber cloth and you would buff that polish into your cured resin piece, and it'll kind of clear up those clouds and give it a really shiny finish. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful in some way for you. I did this in honor of my Sebastian, who was just my soulmate dog. And this is going in my bedroom so I can see him every night. I want to say thank you to everyone who watches my videos. Thank you to Dakota, my son, for editing and shooting my videos. And please give this a like, a comment, a share, and please subscribe. And if you tap the notification bell, you'll be alerted whenever I post a new video. Thank you so much.